Marcus lingered at the electronics rack in a large department store. Security cameras, from the expensive to the basic, lined the shelves in front of him. Small boxes with photos of the cameras stared back at him, promising home security and peace of mind. Marcus's hand reached for the cheapest model, a white plastic camera for $49. He picked up the box and read the description on the back. It was a small camera, capable of streaming video to his phone via Wi-Fi and recording it to a memory card. Nothing special, average picture quality, nothing fancy. But it would do. Marcus pressed his lips together and glanced around, as if afraid someone would guess what he needed the device for. The department was almost empty. A teenager in a branded t-shirt was boredly rearranging the products on the neighboring display case. An elderly couple was choosing a new TV in the distance. No one was paying attention to Marcus. He sighed, driving away his doubts at once, and put the box with the camera in the cart. On his way to the checkout, he stopped several times, sometimes pretending to look at other products, sometimes just standing there, lost, looking at the floor. His thoughts swarmed chaotically. A week ago, he couldn't even imagine that he would find himself in this situation, buying a hidden camera to spy on his own wife. The memory of how it all began came to mind. For the past few months, Jess had seemed distant. Her phone was always face down, and she would go into another room to answer calls. She was more likely to be at work or staying with friends. At first, he tried to convince himself that it was a mistake. Gradually, more and more strange things appeared. The smell of men's cologne on her dress, deleted messages in the chat history, new expensive perfume that he did not give her. Every little thing added to the anxiety piggy bank. Marcus tried to speak to her carefully, asking questions about her day. Jess answered, but too calmly, avoiding his eyes. No outright lies, no confessions, nothing to cling to. Just a numb wall between them, growing imperceptibly and seemingly permanently. At the checkout, Marcus paid in cash so that the purchase wouldn't be reflected in the bank account he and his wife shared. He felt his face heat up as the cashier scanned the items. He felt as if the cashier, the guard at the door, and the random people around him all knew what he was up to. But no one stopped him. Marcus arrived home late in the afternoon. Jess hadn't returned from work yet, and their son Tyler was at baseball practice before dinner. That gave Marcus time to set up the camera. He went upstairs to the bedroom. His hand shook as he attached the camera to the dresser across from his bed. The white case of the device almost blended into the wall, but Marcus hid it behind a stack of books on the top shelf anyway. The lens just peeked out from between the spines. You wouldn't notice it if you didn't know. After connecting the camera to his home Wi-Fi and setting up the app on his phone, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. In the quiet of the bedroom, he could hear the blood rushing in his ears. He looked at the marital bed, the neatly made blanket, the pillows nearby. The bed felt foreign. Marcus ran his hand over the smooth surface of the bedspread, trying to remember the last time he and Jess had just sat here together, talking or laughing. The memories wouldn't come. Instead, anxiety pounded in his head. He checked the picture on his phone. The camera was showing the room from top to bottom, covering most of the bedroom. The bed and the door were just visible. Marcus tilted the lens slightly for a better view, trying not to make any noise. Then, satisfied with the settings, he walked out, closing the door as it was usually closed. He had barely reached the bottom when he heard the front door open. Jess was back. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to calm his heartbeat, and headed into the hallway to meet his wife. Jess stood in front of the mirror, unbuttoning her coat. She shuddered slightly when she saw her husband. She hadn't expected a warm welcome from him lately. Marcus smiled a little tensely. "Hello, how was your day?" "Usually," Jess answered, avoiding his gaze. They exchanged a few phrases, about the weather, about Tyler being busy with training. Everything sounded strained and alien. Marcus, meanwhile, was counting down the time until his wife would go to the bedroom, unsuspecting, and he would be able to start the recording. Later that night, when Jess had gone to bed earlier than usual, citing fatigue, Marcus remained on the couch downstairs, staring at his phone. The app was streaming a live feed from their bedroom. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Jess lay under the covers, her back to the camera, headlights from the street blazing across the room. And then, closer to midnight, the front door creaked quietly. Cautious steps were heard in the hallway. Marcus froze, suppressing the trembling in his fingers. The figure of a man in a dark jacket appeared on the phone screen. Jess rose from the bed to meet him. Even without a sound, everything became clear from the expression on her face. She was smiling at the man she led into the house. Marcus watched as strange arms embraced his wife, as Jess kissed this man in a semi-dark room. At some point, everything started to swim before Marcus's eyes. He jumped up from the couch, feeling his chest squeezed by a hot hoop. Another moment, and the phone slipped out of his hands. Marcus closed his eyes, clutching the windowsill, gasping for air. The world was collapsing, but strangely quiet upstairs, behind the closed bedroom door. Only an indistinct rustling could still be heard. When he had the strength, Marcus picked up the phone. The recording continued. On the screen, Jess and her lover, entwined in an embrace on the marital bed. Marcus did not watch any further. He turned off the broadcast and covered his face with his hands. That night, he didn't say a word to his wife. He lay next to her, sleepless, feeling the alien warmth next to her. And in the morning, Marcus woke up before everyone else. He barely slept, dozed off in fits and starts, listening to every rustle. The house was quiet. In the semi-darkness of the bedroom, he saw the silhouette of Jess sleeping, her even breathing. For a moment, he had a crazy desire to pretend that nothing had happened. But it was enough to remember yesterday's scene on the phone screen as reality rolled in again. He stood up, trying to make no noise, and walked into the bathroom. A pale, drawn face stared back at him in the mirror. There were shadows under his eyes, a dent in his cheek from the pillow. Marcus looked down. It was hard for him to comprehend that this exhausted man was himself. Tyler woke up half an hour later. Marcus heard his son stomping around his room, throwing off his pajamas, then grunting as he pulled on a t-shirt. Usually in the mornings, Tyler ran into his parents' bedroom to jump around, call them for breakfast. Today, to Marcus's surprise, the boy quietly poked his head in the door. "Dad, are we getting up yet?" he asked in a whisper, glancing at his sleeping mother. Marcus nodded and motioned for his son to step out into the hallway so as not to wake Jess. He knew they needed to send Tyler to school today and then talk in private. In the kitchen, Marcus put a coffee pot on the stove and began frying eggs for his son. Tyler sat down at the table with his tablet and began watching a video, but soon put the gadget aside. He clearly felt the tension. He twirled a fork in his hands and glanced at his father. "Dad, did you have a fight with Mom?" he suddenly asked quietly. Marcus winced as he flipped the eggs in the pan. "What makes you think that?" "Well," Tyler shrugged. "You barely talked yesterday, and Mom's still sleeping now. Is it her day off?" Marcus turned off the heat and transferred the eggs to a plate. "No, she's a little sick," he lied after a pause. "Let Mom rest." Tyler frowned but nodded. Marcus set the plate in front of him and stroked his son's tousled hair. "Let's have breakfast, champion." They ate in silence. Marcus tried to smile at his son, but inside he was clenched with anxiety. He hadn't yet decided how to tell Tyler about the future. And was it necessary right now? Before they could finish their juice, Jess walked into the kitchen. She was already dressed jeans, a sweater, and had her hair pulled back into a ponytail. She looked tired. Marcus caught her eye. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Tyler, noticing his mother, immediately began chatting, trying to break the silence. "Mom, I got dressed myself and even made my bed. Can I go for a walk with Jacob after school?" Jess looked away from Marcus and tried to smile at her son. "Of course you can, but do your homework first." "Yay," Tyler muttered, finishing his juice. Marcus rose from the table. "It's time to move," he said, looking at his watch. "You shouldn't be late." "Will Mom take you?" Tyler asked. Usually they took turns driving him, but today Marcus had thought of everything. "I'll take you," he answered calmly. Jess weakly objected. "Maybe I should. I'll do it myself, Marcus repeated firmly, looking her straight in the eyes. She remained silent and only leaned down to kiss her son on the top of his head. Have a nice day at school, Ty. Marcus helped Tyler put on his backpack. The boy kissed his mother on the cheek and ran out into the yard to the car. Marcus paused in the doorway, turning to look at Jess. She was standing in the middle of the kitchen, hugging herself as if she was cold. I'll be back soon. We need to talk, he said quietly. Jess nodded and closed her eyes. Marcus turned away and hurried to the car. The drive to school took about 10 minutes. Tyler chatted the entire way about the upcoming practice and how cool it would be to go to a baseball game on the weekend. Marcus nodded, but barely listened. His thoughts were already on the upcoming conversation. When they pulled up to the school, his son suddenly asked, "Dad, is everything really okay with Mom?" Marcus hesitated for a second before answering, then tried to smile confidently. "Yes, everything is fine. It's just that adults get tired. Don't worry." Tyler studied his father's face incredulously. Marcus rubbed the stubble on his chin and gently nudged his son. "Run, or the bell will ring soon." "Bye, Dad," Tyler said and jumped out of the car. After running away, he turned around and waved. Marcus waved back and waited until his son's figure disappeared through the school doors. He sat behind the wheel for a few more minutes, gathering his courage. His heart began to pound rapidly again, but he firmly decided there would be no scene. They would simply calmly discuss how to live on. Marcus came home around 9 in the morning. Jess was waiting for him in the same place, sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold in front of her. When she heard her husband's footsteps, she looked up, her eyes red, as if she had been crying. But now she was holding herself steady. Marcus sat down opposite him. They were silent for a while. They sat at the kitchen table for a few minutes in the morning silence, the untouched tea growing cold between them, the birds chirping outside the window, unaware of the drama in the house. Marcus looked at his clasped fingers, steeling himself, and Jess nervously fiddled with the edge of her napkin. Her quiet voice broke the silence. Jess spoke first. "You know everything, right?" Her voice sounded hoarse. Marcus nodded. "Yes, I saw you yesterday." Jess closed her eyes and ran her hand over her forehead as if she had a headache. "How?" "A camera," he answered after a pause. "I bought a cheap camera and put it in the bedroom, and I saw everything." Jess paled and bit her lip. Marcus expected her to make excuses or get angry about being followed. Instead, she just slumped her shoulders as if giving in. "I'm sorry," she whispered, looking away. I'm so sorry, Mark." He was silent, his hands clasped together on the table. Hearing her apology was both important and not enough. Jess continued, trying to find the words. "I didn't want this to happen. I was going to tell you everything myself. I was just afraid." "What were you afraid of?" he asked quietly. She sighed. "That you'll hate me. That we won't be able to talk normally. For Tyler." At the mention of his son, Marcus's face twitched. He shook his head slowly. "Let's talk normally. Now we seem to be talking calmly, but it doesn't make it any easier." Jess reached across the table as if she wanted to touch his hand, but pulled it back at the last moment. "I know. Nothing can be fixed now." "Who are you with? How long has this been going on?" Marcus breathed out, gathering the courage to ask the main question. Jess covered her face with her hands for a second, then answered, trying to remain calm. "His name is Anthony. We work together. It all started a few months ago. At first, just talking, then coffee, lunch. I didn't even notice how I crossed the line." Her lips trembled, and she turned away to the window. Marcus felt a lump of anger inside him. Months of lies while he hadn't suspected anything. While he had been trying to figure out what was going on, she had been spending time with this Anthony. But he held back. He didn't want to find out the details of the betrayal. Now they would only hurt more. "Do you love him?" he asked directly. Jess swallowed. I don't understand it myself. I felt good with him. Easy. You were always busy with work. You came home tired. We grew apart, and with him. It seemed like I was young again, free. Marcus chuckled, joylessly and quietly. Free? From your family? From me and Tyler? No, she shouted too sharply, then came to her senses and lowered her voice. No, of course not. I love Tyler. And I loved you. She barely managed to utter the last words. A tense silence fell over the kitchen. Marcus tried to comprehend. Loved was a past tense, and his own feelings for her were now a tangled bundle of pain. Was this love, or just a wound? Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy? He asked finally. We could have tried to change something. See a psychologist, I don't know. Jess shook her head. I myself didn't really understand what I wanted. I thought it was just a crisis. It would pass. And then everything went too far. I'm sorry. Marcus nodded slowly. They fell silent again. The clock above the stove ticked softly, reminding them of the time. Finally, he sighed. I think we should break up. The words, though expected, hung like a heavy weight. Jess closed her eyes, 2 tears rolling down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. I guess so. I can't forgive you, Marcus continued wearily. And I can't pretend that everything is as before. It will only wear everyone out. I understand, Jess wiped her tears with the back of her hand. You're right. Marcus felt relieved that at least he didn't have to argue about the decision. Painful, but clear. We have to think about Tyler, he said. How to tell him when. Jess sniffled, but pulled herself together. I don't want to hurt him. He loves us both very much. And we both love him, Marcus answered firmly. So let's agree, no dirt on him, no matter what happens between us. Jess looked him straight in the eye for the first time all morning. Of course, I will never turn him against you. And I'm against you, Marcus nodded. For him, we just didn't get along, as they say, or something like that. Let's not go into details. Yes, Jess whispered. Let him think it's better this way. Marcus ran his hand over his face. The main thing that united them now was caring for their son. For that, it was worth holding on with dignity. Jess asked quietly, Where are you going now? I won't go to work. I'll take a couple of days off at my own expense, he answered. I think I'll move in with my sister today, temporarily. It's better for you and me to live separately. At these words, Jess took a sharp breath, as if in pain, but did not object. Okay, she nodded. That's probably better. Then we'll decide about the house, about the documents. Marcus continued in a businesslike tone, although everything inside was aching. I think we'll do it through lawyers, but in a good way, Jess. I don't want a war. She hastily agreed. Of course. No war. I am guilty before you, before both of you. There is no point in me complicating things. Marcus looked down. Hearing her admit guilt was a little easier than if she had justified herself. But it still left a bitter taste. Okay, he stood up from the table. I'll pack my things. Jess stood up too, her hands shaking as she pushed her chair back. Mark, she called quietly. He stopped at the kitchen threshold and turned around. Jess looked at him, lost. I'm really, very sorry. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. He wanted to say something, perhaps something more heartfelt or final, but he only nodded. He turned away and went upstairs to pack his bag, leaving Jess standing alone in the middle of the empty kitchen. Marcus picked up the heavy duffel bag and took one last look around the bedroom. He had taken the bare minimum: clothes for a few days, toiletries, a laptop. He would decide the rest later. The bed was unmade. He had removed his sheets so that Jess wouldn't have to. He carefully folded the sheets and left them on the dresser. It was a symbolic gesture of farewell to their life together. On his way down, he found Jess still in the kitchen. She was sitting with her eyes fixed on the countertop. Hearing footsteps, she stood up. Did you take everything? She asked quietly. Marcus nodded, not meeting her gaze. The pain in his chest began to pulse again, but he forced it down with an effort of will. Thank you for no scenes, Jess added, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. He just shrugged. They wouldn't have changed anything. She nodded, and when he stepped towards the door, she suddenly sobbed. "Please tell Tyler that I love him." Marcus stopped and turned around. "Tell him yourself in the evening. I'll bring him for dinner." Jess put her hand to her mouth and nodded stiffly. There was nothing else they could say to each other. Marcus walked out of the house, trying not to slam the door, and felt the fresh day air sting his hot eyes. He got into the car and sat for a few minutes until the shaking in his hands subsided a little. Then he started the engine and drove to his sister's. He had called Anna that morning, right after his conversation with Jess. His sister, having listened to the general outline of what had happened, told him to come right away without asking any questions. Her calm, confident voice almost broke Marcus's self-control. He wanted to burst into tears right into the phone. But he held back, promising to be there in an hour. Anna lived 30 minutes away in a nearby suburb. She had been divorced for several years and lived alone in a small two-room apartment on the ground floor of a brick house. When Marcus parked in front of her building, the door immediately opened and her sister ran out onto the porch. Short, with a short dark haircut, Anna was 5 years older than Marcus, but looked younger than her 40s. Now, however, there was a worried compassion on her face. Marcus got out of the car, and Anna hugged him silently. He froze in this warm embrace, burying his face in her shoulder. For a few seconds he stood there, feeling his sister stroking his back. His eyes stung again. "Okay, that's enough, otherwise I'm going to cry with you," Anna said softly, letting him go. "Let's go into the house." She helped carry the bag inside. The hallway was cozy, coats and scarves on the hanger. It smelled of baked goods and vanilla-scented candles. Marcus suddenly felt a sharp difference. Everything here was foreign, not like home. But now his home was no longer there. Anna led him into the living room. The room was small, filled with bookshelves and houseplants. In the center was a light gray sofa with a blanket. Next to it was a coffee table. A tabby cat had settled down on the armchair nearby, but when he saw the guests, he jumped up discontentedly and ran into the hallway. "Don't mind Barney, you timid one," smiled the sister. "Make yourself comfortable. This is your sofa." Marcus put his bag down on the floor and looked around. "Thank you for taking me in," he said hoarsely. "Mark, come on." Anna took him by the arm and sat him down on the sofa. "Of course I took him in. Live as long as you need. It will even make me happier." He smiled sadly. "I'll try for a little while." Anna sat down next to him, looking closely into his face. "Now tell me properly what happened. You didn't really say anything on the phone." Marcus leaned his head back against the sofa and closed his eyes. "Jess cheated on me. I caught them." Anna gripped the armrest of the sofa. "Damn," she cursed quietly. "I'm sorry." Anna didn't believe it right away. She threw up her hands. "I noticed how you argued less, but also talked less. I didn't think it was that bad." "Damn," he shrugged, unable to say anything more for now. They sat in silence for a few moments. Finally, Marcus spoke, looking at the ceiling. "It's my own fault, I guess. I was busy at work, didn't notice what was on her mind. But still, to do that." His voice broke. Anna shook her head. "Don't you dare blame yourself. Cheating is her choice, not yours. I knew things had been tough for you too lately, but I didn't think she was capable of that." Marcus clenched his fists in his lap. "If you had seen them." He stopped short, imagining that scene, and fell silent. Anna placed her palm on his clenched fist. "No need, don't remember. You need to calm down now. Do you want some tea? Or maybe something stronger? I think I have some wine left." "No, I don't want to drink," Marcus sighed. "Tea would be better." His sister nodded and went into the kitchen. Marcus heard her filling the kettle with water, rattling the mugs. He ran his hand over his face. It was a strange feeling. Everything had collapsed, and all around him was ordinary life. The refrigerator was humming, a car was driving past the window, an old clock was ticking faintly in the wall. Anna returned with 2 steaming mugs. She sat down next to him, handing one to his brother. Marcus wrapped his hands around the hot mug, feeling his frozen fingers thaw a little. "What are you going to do next?" the sister asked cautiously. Get a divorce, Marcus answered bluntly. We've already decided everything. The main thing is that Tyler suffers the least. Anna nodded sadly. Poor boy. Does he know? Not yet. Marcus took a sip of tea. We wanted to tell him together, but I don't know how or when. We'll come to our senses first. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. The upcoming explanation to his son was almost more frightening than the breakup itself. Anna put her hand on his shoulder. If necessary, I will support you. Bring him to me if necessary. We will distract him. Marcus nodded gratefully. Thank you. They sat sipping tea. Marcus gradually felt himself warming up inside either from the hot drink or from the very presence of his loved one. Anna quietly told him about something that happened at her work, trying to distract her brother. He listened with half an ear, but appreciated her efforts. During the day, Anna had to go away for a short. While on business, she worked as an accountant and promised to bring reports to a client. Marcus assured her that he would be alone and calm. When the door closed behind his sister, he sighed with relief, finally alone. He lay down on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Thoughts of Jess and their conversation immediately came flooding back. Bitterness rose in his chest. Their 10 years of marriage, had it really all been for nothing? Joyful scenes flashed before his eyes, the wedding, Tyler's birth, yesterday's betrayal like an ink stain dripping onto all the bright memories. Marcus closed his eyes. No, there was no point in thinking about it. He needed to switch. He stood up, went into the small guest bathroom, and washed his face with cold water. Looking in the mirror, he said firmly to himself in a low voice, "You can handle it." Returning to the living room, he opened his laptop to check his email and distract himself with work. However, he couldn't concentrate. The text line was blurry. His thoughts were wandering. Marcus slammed the laptop shut. Instead of working, he called Tyler, who had already returned from school, and was cheerfully telling him how he and his mother were making pizza. Marcus tried to sound cheerful, promising to pick him up for the weekend tomorrow. His son didn't suspect anything. He chattered about his business, asked if his dad was coming to spend the night. Marcus had to lie that he had business today and was late, so he would spend the night at Aunt Anna's. Tyler was surprised, but accepted the explanation and asked to pet Barney. After the call, Marcus sat for a long time with the phone in his hands. Fatigue fell upon him like a heavy slab. For the first time in the last 24 hours, he did not have to control himself with anyone. He allowed himself to simply sit silently, looking out the window, until it began to get dark outside. In the evening, Anna returned with bags of groceries. On the way, she stopped at the store, bought him his favorite peanut cookies and some other goodies to lift his spirits. They ate salad and pasta together, although Marcus barely tasted the food, swallowing with difficulty. His sister did not insist. She just made sure that he ate at least a little. Night fell quickly. Anna got him a fresh bed. She brought a pillow, a blanket, and a sheet. "We won't unfold the sofa, it's quite wide," she said, laying the bed linen right on top of the upholstery. "Will that be okay for you?" "Of course," Marcus nodded. "I fall asleep quickly anywhere." It wasn't true, but he didn't want to be capricious. Anna made the bed and, stroking his hand, wished him good night. Marcus stripped down to a t-shirt and sweatpants and lay down on the couch. His sister turned off the light and went to her room. In the darkness, the living room seemed strange and quiet to Marcus. The lights of the neighboring houses were visible through the window. Somewhere in the distance, a police car wailed its siren and fell silent. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and he couldn't sleep a wink. The sofa was soft, even comfortable, but unfamiliar. Marcus tossed and turned, pulling the blanket up and then throwing it away. Barney crept along the wall, his eyes glittering in the darkness. The cat was not yet accustomed to a stranger. Marcus extended his hand, whispering, "KSKS, come to me." The cat sniffed the tips of his fingers warily, then jumped onto the legs of the sofa and lay down there, not touching the man. A quiet purr soon filled the silence. The warmth of the fluffy lump at his feet calmed Marcus a little. He stared at the ceiling, noticing the smallest details, a crack in the whitewash, the reflection of headlights sliding along the wall. His thoughts were getting a little confused. Tomorrow he would have to start a new life without Jess, without his familiar home. It was scary and depressing. But somewhere deep inside there was a spark of hope. For the sake of his son, he had to cope. Under this quiet determination, Marcus imperceptibly fell into his first deep sleep in a long time. A week had passed since Marcus had moved in with his sister. During that time, the intense emotions had dulled somewhat, giving way to the daily grind, going to work, driving Tyler to training, dealing with paperwork. Marcus and Jess kept in touch as needed, mostly texting each other to coordinate time with their son. Both tried to be polite and clear. Their messages resembled business correspondence between two colleagues, and this made Marcus feel alternately bitter and relieved. On Friday, they decided to meet in person to discuss the details of the divorce and agree on everything on the beach. Jess herself suggested, "Let's write down the rules so that we don't quarrel over trivial things later." Marcus agreed. They chose a neutral place, a small cafe in the center, where the whole family used to have breakfast, sometimes on weekends. In the evening, when Tyler was at Jess's grandmother, she took her son to her mother for the night. The former spouses sat at a table by the window. Outside the window, the rare passers-by were hurrying about their business. A jazz melody was playing softly in the hall. Marcus noticed that Jess had lost weight this week and looked tired. She also cast a quick, studying glance at him, probably noting the dark circles under his eyes. Jess was the first to speak. I jotted down the main points. She pulled a notebook sheet of notes from her bag. Her hands shook slightly as she smoothed the paper on the table. "See if there's anything you can add or correct." Marcus pulled the sheet of paper forward. Jess's handwriting was familiarly neat. He began to read. 1. Custody of Tyler, joint, equal participation. 2. Accommodation. Tyler lives with his mother, and his father sees him on a schedule as often as possible. 3. Schedule. Dad picks Tyler up from school every Wednesday and drops him off in the evening. Dad takes Tyler every other weekend weekly from Friday to Sunday. 4. Vacations and holidays, discussed separately, in turn, or together by agreement. 5. Finances for the child, jointly, equally. Large expenses discuss in advance. 6. House. Jess and Tyler keep it until Tyler goes to school. Then sell it if needed and split the money. 7. Property and accounts. Division peacefully by agreement, list of divisions separately. 8. Communication. Respectful. Do not quarrel in front of the child. Do not criticize each other in front of him. 9. New relationships. Do not introduce Tyler to new partners without mutual consent until the relationship is serious. Everyone's personal life is their own business, but the priority is the well-being of their son. 10. Tyler's college bill. As planned, we're saving together, divorce or not. Marcus read the list twice, thoughtfully. His heart sank as he imagined how these points would be implemented in their new reality. But he had to admit, Jess had thought this through. "Impressive," he said quietly, pushing the sheet aside. "You didn't miss anything, it seems." Jess shrugged. I consulted. "Well, I read on the internet how people negotiate, and my mother suggested about the house." Marcus nodded. The house seemed like a reasonable solution. Let Jess and her son live there, and when Tyler grew up, they would sell it and divide it up. He didn't care about the house now. He wouldn't go back to live there. According to the schedule, he tapped his finger on point 3. I would perhaps like a little more time. Maybe not a weekend every other week, but every week. Or, say, 2 overnight stays a week at my place. He spoke calmly, but inside he was afraid that Jess would take it with hostility. However, she thoughtfully bit her lip and nodded. "I think we could try every weekend. Just, what if you have plans?" Marcus smiled bitterly. "Besides Tyler, I don't really have anywhere to spend my time right now. So my plans are to spend time with him." Jess looked at him sadly. "Okay, every weekend with you, if he doesn't mind." Of course, if he has his own things to do, friends' birthdays or something else, then we'll adjust, added Marcus. Flexibly. Jess picked up a pen and carefully corrected the entry on the sheet, marking every next to the weekend. Jess looked at the list. What about holidays, like Thanksgiving, Christmas? Marcus thought about it and suggested. We can alternate by year, or if we want, celebrate together, as we agreed today without stress. Jess smiled softly. I think it's reasonable to alternate at first, and then we'll see how it goes. They nodded at each other, adding it to the list. Also, about point 6, Marcus said carefully, maybe we shouldn't wait until you finish school. If it's hard for you to maintain the house alone, we can decide earlier. Jess shook her head. I can handle it. I have a job. My mom will help if anything happens. I want Tyle to have stability for now, his own home, his own room. You know, he's attached. Her voice wavered for a second, but she pulled herself together. Marcus pursed his lips and nodded. Okay, let him live as he is accustomed to, as much as possible. They clarified a couple of other things. For example, that Tyler would remain in the same school, and if one of them decided to move to another city someday, it would be discussed separately. But for now, no one was planning on moving far. The waitress came over and Jess quickly turned the paper face down as if it were a secret contract. They ordered coffee, Marcus black, Jess cappuccino. They were silent for a while, waiting for their order. Finally, Jess spoke quietly, looking at her hands. Thank you for agreeing to all this without a trial and scandals. I know I'm guilty, and I could have expected the worst outcome. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. Deep down inside, he still harbored resentment, but he was tired of nursing it. We both want our son not to suffer, he said. Then we need to be adults. Taking revenge on you. What good would it do? The only one I'd hurt would be Tyler. Jess looked at him gratefully. You're a good father, and you were a good husband. It was me who ruined it all. Marcus turned to the window. The sharp question, why did you do that, was on the tip of his tongue, but he didn't want to stir up emotions again. Instead, he asked, how is Tyler with you? Doesn't he ask too much? Jess shook her head. I said that you help Aunt Anna. That's why you spend the night there. He seemed to believe me, but he keeps asking when you'll come. He misses you. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. Luckily, the coffee arrived just in time, giving him time to collect himself. He took a sip of the hot drink. I'll pick him up tomorrow morning, he said. We'll spend the weekend together. Of course, Jess nodded. He's waiting. They discussed a couple more financial issues. Bills, the credit card Marcus had left with Jess. She promised to open her own and close this one. Everything was surprisingly calm, businesslike, and precise. When the lists of topics were exhausted, there was an awkward pause. The former spouses had nothing more to discuss. Everything important was laid out on the shelves, and it was better not to touch on personal matters. Jess was the first to look at her watch. It's late. I think I should go. Marcus looked too. It was approaching 9 o'clock in the evening. The cafe was empty, except for them, only a couple at a distant table. Yes, let's go, he agreed. They paid and stood on the sidewalk. Marcus noticed Jess shivering in her thin coat. It was a chilly evening. He automatically suggested, should I give you a ride? Jess hesitated, but then smiled sadly. Thanks, no need. She stumbled mid-sentence. They'll take me away. Marcus understood everything without words. Probably her new man, Anthony, decided to come for her. There was an unpleasant pang in his chest, but Marcus just nodded. As you wish. Then, see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, she answered quietly. They exchanged glances, so much that was once close, dear, and now seemed alien. Jess turned and walked quickly down the street to the right, taking out her phone. Apparently, she was in a hurry to get to the one who was waiting for her. Marcus watched her for only a second. Then he turned back to his car. Everything was going according to plan. No wars, just rules. He had done everything right, but why did it hurt so much? Not finding an answer, He got into the car and drove away from the cafe, trying not to think about who his almost ex-wife would go with and where. 2 weeks after signing the agreement, Marcus rented a small apartment for himself and Tyler. It was a modest two-room apartment in a quiet area, not far from his son's school so that it would be convenient for him. It was located on the second floor of a brick building, with a glass balcony and a view of the playground. Marcus consciously looked for a place where Tyler would feel comfortable. Moving day was hectic. Anna and her friend brought the furniture and boxes they had bought in advance in their pickup truck. Marcus had bought the bare minimum in advance: a sofa bed for himself, a desk, and a small closet, and a simple single bed and a bookcase for Tyler. The rest of the furniture in the apartment was rented with the basics: a kitchen, closets. "Put the boxes here," Marcus commanded, helping to unload. "And this one goes to the nursery." He and Tyler had chosen the room intended for the nursery together when they came to look at the apartment. Tyler had been curiously exploring the empty rooms, knocking on the walls, looking out the window. He hadn't yet fully realized that this would become his second home. Marcus glanced at his son. Tyler was now sitting on the floor in the middle of his still half-empty room, laying out his cars from the box on the carpet. The boy looked serious, focused on his lesson. Anna sat down next to Tyler. "So, how do you like the new place, Builder?" she asked cheerfully. "Where should we put the garage for the cars?" Tyler shrugged. "I don't know yet. Everything is different here." Marcus heard their conversation, and his heart ached. He walked into the room holding a box of toys. "Let's decide together how to arrange it," he suggested softly. Tyler looked at his dad. "And shall we hang up my world map, like I did at home?" Marcus nodded and smiled. "Of course, I brought it. We can attach it above your bed right now." "Uh-huh," the son tried to smile back, but it didn't come out very confidently. Anna cast an understanding glance at her brother and stood up quietly. "I'll be in the kitchen unpacking a couple of boxes," she said, leaving the father and son alone. Marcus sat down on the floor next to Tyler. "Son," he began quietly, "I know that it is not easy to get used to a new place, but I will try to make you like it here. Together, we will arrange everything as you wish." Tyler moved the car across the floor and didn't answer. Marcus continued. "Remember, we talked. Now you will have 2 rooms, one for Mom, one for Dad. We can make this room in a different style, not like at home. For example, we will hang posters with baseball players or Star Wars. What do you say?" The boy shrugged. "Doesn't matter." Marcus sighed. It was a whatever he had heard often in recent days. Soon after meeting Jess in a cafe, they told their son about the divorce together. They tried to do it as gently as possible, that Mom and Dad would now live separately, but they both loved him. He would be able to see them both. Tyler then asked only a few questions. "We won't live together anymore." "Why? Did you fight? Is it because of me?" He and Jess assured that no, that it just happened that way, and it wasn't his fault. Tyler was silent, listened, and then suddenly burst into tears. Marcus will never forget this desperate childish cry from which his own soul was torn apart. They hugged him for a long time together, comforting him, and they themselves tried not to show their tears. Since then, Tyler seemed to have withdrawn. He didn't act up openly, but he became quieter, more serious, and would often answer, "I don't know," or "I don't care." At first, he really wanted his dad to come home and live. He would ask more than once, "Maybe you two could make up." I had to patiently explain that it would be better for everyone, an answer that clearly didn't satisfy the child. Marcus patted his son on the back now. "Maybe we can order pizza tonight and watch your favorite movie. Have a housewarming party." Tyler nodded. "Can. And tomorrow morning we'll go to the park nearby. They say there's a cool playground there." "Fine." Monosyllabic answers. But Marcus knew it would take time for Tyler to adjust. A couple of hours later, the main stuff was unpacked. Anna and her friend left, leaving her brother and nephew to sort out the little things. By evening, the apartment had acquired some coziness. Family photos were placed in the corner of the living room. Plates were laid out in the kitchen. In the nursery, Marcus and Tyler assembled a table lamp, attached a world map to the wall, and arranged books on the shelf. Marcus ordered a large pizza and let Tyler have a Coke to celebrate the housewarming. They settled down on the living room carpet in front of the TV and turned on an old sitcom Tyler had loved as a child. For a moment, the atmosphere was almost like the old one, father and son laughing at silly jokes on the screen, arguing over who would get the last slice of pizza. Tyler forgot himself, started chatting about school, about the new level in the video game. Marcus picked up the conversation, trying to keep the moment light. But as the night drew to a close, when it was time to go to bed, the mood changed again. Tyler emerged from the shower, yawning in his pajamas, and stood in the middle of the living room, looking around uncertainly. "What's wrong, kid?" Marcus asked, stacking empty pizza boxes. Can I call my mom to say goodnight?" the son asked quietly. Marcus's throat tightened. Not long ago, he and Jess said goodnight to Tyle every night, and it was a normal part of his son's day. "Of course, go ahead," he answered softly. Tyler dialed his mom's number on his dad's phone. Jess answered almost immediately. His son stepped aside and spoke quietly. "Yeah, we had pizza. No, everything's fine. I miss you too. Good night, Mom." After the call, Tyler handed the phone back. His eyes were shining, either from tears or from fatigue. Marcus put his arm around his shoulders. "Everything is fine. You will see your mother tomorrow evening, as we agreed." Tyler nodded and buried his face in his father's side, hugging him. Marcus felt a lump rise in his throat, but he kept his composure. "Let's go to bed, son." He laid Tyler down in his new bed, adjusted the blanket, and the boy hugged his favorite stuffed shark, the same one Marcus had brought from home. "You sleep here, and I'll be nearby, in the other room. If anything happens, call me, okay? Listen." Marcus sat for a few more minutes in the darkness next to his son, stroking his head. "I love you, Ty," he said quietly. "And I love you too, Dad," came the almost inaudible response. After a while, Tyler was breathing evenly. He had fallen asleep. Marcus carefully left, closing the door. In the living room, he sat down tiredly on the sofa. The first day in the new house was over. 2 houses for one boy was not an easy construction, Marcus thought. But he would do everything to make this transition as painless as possible for his son. On the table next to an empty pizza box was a notebook in which Marcus had drawn up a budget and plans. On the next page, he found a child's drawing. Tyler, while the adults were lugging things, had apparently drawn a diagram of their 2 houses with markers and marked a dotted line showing the route from one to the other. Between the houses stood a figurine of a boy with a backpack, Tyler himself. Next to it, in clumsy childish handwriting, was written, "Mom's house" and "Dad's house." Marcus ran his finger over the boy's figure in the drawing and sighed softly. Now it would be like this 2 houses, one beloved son between them. He carefully folded the drawing and put it in his notebook. He would keep this piece of paper as a reminder of who they were trying to build a new life for. A month had passed since Marcus had started living on his own. A new routine had gradually set in. In the morning, a quick breakfast for himself and Tyler, getting ready for school and work. In the evening, a quick dinner, checking homework, doing laundry, washing dishes. On the weekends, walks with his son in the park or playing at home, and then Tyler returning to his mother on Sunday evening. Everyday life was a routine that left no time for reflection. Marcus sometimes caught himself doing things automatically. He was walking through the supermarket with a cart, just like before, but he was putting fewer products in it. Or he was running the washing machine at half capacity because now there was only his laundry and a little bit of Tyler's. Little things that hid the salty truth their family had split into 2 parts. One of those moments was the first time they went on a major shopping trip alone. They used to go to the supermarket as a family every Sunday. Jess would walk up and down the aisles with a list, Marcus would push the cart, and Tyler would run ahead, asking for a new cereal flavor or cookies. Now Marcus stood alone at the shelves, trying to remember which cereal his son liked and which vegetables to buy so they wouldn't spoil before they were ready. It was unusual to cook for just himself. He noticed a couple nearby. The woman was choosing yogurts. The man was wiping the dirty noses of two toddlers in the cart. Marcus felt a painful twinge of envy and loneliness at the same time. He came across an acquaintance at the supermarket, the mother of one of Tyler's classmates. Seeing Marcus, she asked in surprise, "Oh, you are without your wife today." Marcus forced himself to smile. "Yes, we, are not together anymore." "Oh," the woman was embarrassed and impulsively squeezed his elbow. "Sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay," he waved it off. "We're trying to make sure everything stays okay for Tyler." The acquaintance quickly changed the subject to school, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. But Marcus did the rest of his shopping with a lump in his throat. The news was gradually spreading among his acquaintances, another confirmation of the reality of their divorce. At home, while unpacking his grocery bags, he suddenly realized that he had automatically bought a jar of olives, although he himself did not like them. Jess loved olives. She regularly added them to salads and pizza. Marcus put the jar on a shelf in the cupboard and simply looked at it for a few minutes, realizing that the habits from his past life still controlled him. Alone without his son, the apartment seemed especially quiet. On such evenings, Marcus tried to occupy himself with something. Sometimes he would sort through old papers, sometimes he would answer work emails until late, and sometimes he would turn on the TV for the background, at least some sound. One day, he decided to cook a proper dinner for a change. He mostly ate sandwiches and warmed up food. He took a cookbook from the shelf, which Jess had once given him for his anniversary, and chose a recipe for stewed beef with vegetables. The process took more than an hour: cutting, frying, simmering. The kitchen was filled with aromas, and Marcus even began to think that it distracted him from his gloomy thoughts. However, sitting down at the table and trying the dish, he only sighed heavily. It was too salty. The beef was soft, but clearly over-peppered and salty to the taste. Marcus threw down his fork. Over-salted, he thought. Previously, if he made a mistake with the seasonings, Jess always joked with a smile. "No problem, add some sour cream, it will save it." Now there was no one at the table. He ate a couple of spoonfuls with difficulty, covered the rest with a lid, let it sit. Maybe he'll fix it tomorrow. His appetite was gone. This oversalted food seemed to him a symbol of his current life. He tried to do it well, but it turned out bitter and salty. Marcus found himself increasingly unable to sleep at night. He tossed and turned on the couch, listening to the clock tick and the refrigerator motor hum. His thoughts raced, about work, about bills, about the feelings that remained. The salty truth of his situation was that, despite the outwardly calm flow of his life, there was a gaping emptiness inside him. He missed the closeness of family, not so much Jess herself. The betrayal still echoed with pain at the thought, but the very feeling of partnership. To have someone to exchange a few words with in the evening, to feel support. Now all the decisions, from the choice of washing powder to plans for the future, lay solely on him. One such night, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He opened his laptop and started searching for articles and forums for divorced fathers. He wanted to understand if what he was feeling was normal and how others dealt with it. He read several stories. Some were worse, some were better. Some wrote that time heals, others advised to fully devote themselves to work or a hobby. One comment caught his attention. "At first, you'll swallow the salty truth of loneliness every day, but over time, you'll get used to the taste. And then one day, you'll want something sweeter, and you'll be ready for it." Marcus couldn't help but grin, figuratively but accurately observed. He closed the laptop and looked at the dark window. In the reflection, he saw the silhouette of a tortured man. "I have to change," he suddenly thought clearly. "This period is like a bitter medicine. You have to live through it. But you can't get stuck in it forever." He has a son, he has loved ones, he has a life ahead. Marcus stood up resolutely and went to the bathroom. He decided that from tomorrow on he would try to organize his life differently, not as a sad divorcee, but as a person who was starting a new chapter. He would cook normal food and not oversalt it, sleep more, maybe finally go to the gym. The next morning, for the first time in a long time, he got up before the alarm and went for a light jog around the neighborhood. The frosty air burned his lungs, the blood ran faster through his veins. Marcus was surprised at how much strength was hidden in his body. He just had to force himself to act. Running past the quiet houses at dawn, he caught himself thinking that the city also woke up differently, not as a gray mass, but as a scattering of lights in the windows, each of which had its own life. Returning home with frozen red cheeks and strengthened thoughts, Marcus took a hot shower and cooked a full breakfast, an omelet with vegetables and freshly brewed coffee. He even whistled a tune to himself while frying vegetables in a frying pan. Housework no longer seemed like a heavy duty. On the contrary, in the right rhythm, everyday life gave him a sense of stability. Marcus looked at himself in the mirror and nodded at his own reflection, as if making a silent agreement not to allow himself to drown in everyday melancholy. It was late Saturday night as Marcus and Tyler walked home from a movie. Tyler was tired and dozing lightly, clinging to his father's arm as they walked up to their second floor. The hallway was dimly lit and quiet. Marcus inserted the key into the lock of his apartment and tried to turn it. The lock wouldn't budge. He frowned and turned the key harder. The key turned barely a couple of millimeters and stopped. The door wouldn't open. "Dad, what's going on?" Tyler muttered, shaken out of his half-asleep state. "Something's wrong with the lock." Marcus responded, trying not to show panic. He tried to pull out the key. It was stuck, wouldn't move either way. Marcus pulled the door towards himself, then pushed it away and tried again to no avail. His heart began to pound anxiously. They were locked outside their own apartment late at night. "Is the lock broken?" Tyler asked, starting to get worried. "It looks like it's jammed." Marcus tensed his shoulder, pressing on the door. "Don't worry, we'll figure something out soon." He looked around for help. The floor was empty. He could call the emergency services, but that would take time and money, and his son was already nodding off. "Maybe Aunt Anna knows what to do," Tyler suggested. "She's far away." Marcus shook his head. "I'll try to ask the neighbors." He went up to the nearest door opposite and knocked quietly, so as not to wake the whole house. For a few seconds nothing, then footsteps were heard. The door opened slightly. Literally on the chain, a woman's face appeared, about 30 years old, with wary blue eyes. "Good evening. Sorry to bother you so late," Marcus began, embarrassed. "My door is jammed. We can't get home. Maybe you have some oil or some tool. I'll try to work out the lock." The woman immediately opened the door wider, taking off the chain. It turned out that she was short, thin, in home jeans and a sweater, with concern on her face. "Oh, well, let's see," she said sympathetically. "I had the same trouble with our castle last winter." A curious red-haired boy, about Tyler's age, peered over her shoulder. Marcus nodded. "Thank you very much. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to spend the night on the stairs." Come on, come on." The neighbor closed her door. The boy remained inside, only cautiously peering out the crack, and went up to Marcus's door. "Does your key come out?" "No, it's jammed," Marcus pointed out. "I can't even turn it properly." The woman frowned. "Looks like the larva is stuck. I have some WD-40, penetrating lubricant. Should we try spraying it?" "That would be great," Marcus said happily. "I'm afraid I'll break the key." The neighbor quickly returned to her apartment and came out with a can of technical oil and a small hammer. "I'm Erin, by the way," she introduced herself, shaking the can. Marcus," he responded. "It's a pleasure to meet you, even under these circumstances." Erin smiled at the corner of her lips. "It happens. Here's a flashlight." She handed him the phone with the flashlight on and carefully inserted the nozzle of the canister into the keyhole. She sprayed it once or twice. "Now try moving the key." Marcus grabbed the key and began to turn it carefully. At first, there was no effect. He rocked the key back and forth, feeling something shift slightly inside. "I'll hold the door," Erin said, grabbing the handle. "You go slowly." After a minute of fiddling, the key finally turned a little more. There was a creak and the lock clicked. "Yes," Marcus exhaled, turning the handle. The door opened. Tyler, who had been watching the whole scene from behind, sighed happily. Hooray, it worked. Erin's smile widened. Well, we've won. Marcus turned to her. You are my savior. I don't even know what I would do without you. Erin was a little embarrassed by the praise. It's nothing. It's good that it worked. Otherwise, I would have had to knock it out. She waved the hammer playfully. Marcus laughed. I hope I won't have to. Thank you very much, Erin. You're welcome. My husband. She stopped for a moment. That is, my ex-husband was a master at breaking down with a tool. I had to learn it myself. Marcus acknowledged her nod of understanding, detecting a hint of bitterness in her voice that was familiar to him. I understand, he said quietly. We're new here too, just the two of us. Erin glanced at Tyler, who was leaning against the door frame, fighting off drowsiness. Come on, put the baby to bed, and it's better to look at the lock tomorrow. You need to lubricate it properly or call a repairman to change the cylinder, otherwise you'll get stuck again. You're right, I'll get to it tomorrow. Thank you again, good night. Good night to you, she smiled. Tyler suddenly came closer and sleepily said, Good night, Aunt Erin. Erin laughed softly. Good night, hero. Sweet dreams. She waved at them and disappeared into her apartment. Marcus led Tyler inside and locked the door with the chain so that at least it wouldn't slam shut. His heart was still pounding from the excitement, but he caught himself thinking not so much about the lock as about his neighbor Erin. It was strange, literally a couple of minutes of communication, and his soul warmed a little from her responsiveness and playful tone. Dad, she's kind, huh? Tyler asked sleepily, taking off his shoes. Very, agreed Marcus, directing his son to the bedroom. We're lucky with our neighbors. Her boy was peeking out. I saw him, Tyler muttered. He probably goes to our school too. Maybe, Marcus thought, we should meet sometime. 10 minutes later, Tyler was asleep, and Marcus stood in the kitchen for a while, holding a can of WD-40 that had gotten onto the table during the commotion. Erin must have forgotten it or left it there on purpose, so it would lubricate the lock. Marcus took the oil and went out into the entryway. The light was out by Erin's door, so they must have gone to bed. He carefully sprayed more lubricant into his lock, turning the key this way and that until it began to move more smoothly. His soul also felt a little lighter. He didn't even notice how long it had been since he had felt such simple human interaction help, a smile from a person he practically didn't know. Having returned the can to the table, Marcus decided to come in the morning to give it back and thank him. Good neighbors are a great fortune, he thought as he went to bed. For some reason, Erin's shining eyes popped into his head as she rejoiced at the success of the castle. Marcus smiled to himself in the darkness. The day had ended with an unexpected little pleasant encounter, and this was not at all unnecessary in his new turn of life. The next day, closer to noon, Marcus, as promised to himself, stopped by Erin's neighbor. He grabbed the can of lubricant that she left behind and a small bag in the evening. While Tyler was sleeping, he baked simple cookies from store-bought dough to treat her as a token of gratitude. Erin herself opened the door. She looked more relaxed today, her blonde hair pulled back into a loose ponytail and a slight smile on her face. Hello, she greeted first. How is your lock? Does it work? Hello, Marcus replied, smiling too. The lock is great, like new. I'm here to return your magic WD-40 and, here, this is for you. He held out a bag of cookies. Erin took it, surprised. Oh, did you bring something? A little gratitude from Tyler and me. I didn't have time to thank him properly yesterday. We were sleepy. Erin peered into the bag and inhaled the aroma of baked goods. Smells delicious. Thank you. Come in for tea then, since we have cookies. She stepped aside, inviting him in. Marcus hesitated a little, embarrassed to disturb him, but Erin seemed genuinely open to the company. Well, if I don't interfere. What are you saying? My son and I were just thinking about indulging in some tea after dinner. You'll be our guest. Marcus stepped inside. Erin's apartment mirrored his layout, but the decor was different. Bright curtains, family photos on the wall. The red-haired boy peered out from the living room. "Ryan, meet our neighbor, Mr. Marcus," Erin said to her son. "And as I understand it, Tyler, who is the same age as you, is his son." "Just Marcus," he corrected sheepishly, crouching down to be at the boy's level. "Hi, Ryan." "Hello," the boy said seriously, studying the guest. "Tyler, is that the one in 4B? Marcus smiled. "Exactly. You aren't classmates, by any chance?" Ryan asked. "We're in parallel classes, but I know Tyler. He's a pitcher in the league." Marcus was surprised. "Yeah, he's on the baseball team. Are you on the baseball team too?" The boy nodded proudly. "Yeah, I'm on another team, the Hawks. We train together on the field in the spring." "It's a small world." Marcus turned to Erin. "Our boys are already acquaintances." "Yeah, Ryan talks about baseball all the time. He probably mentioned Tyler." Erin laughed. "Great." Marcus felt a strange joy, as if their families were already connected. "Tyler is with his mom now, but next time I'll definitely introduce them better." Erin nodded and gestured for them to follow her into the kitchen. "I'll put the kettle on now. Make yourself comfortable." Marcus walked into the small but cozy kitchen. While the hostess was busy with the cups, he looked at the magnets on the refrigerator names of cities, probably travels. "Can I help you?" he offered out of politeness. No, it'll be over in a minute," Erin responded. "Sit down." Marcus sat down at the table, listening. Muffled sounds of a cartoon and the laughter of boys could be heard from the living room. A kettle hissed quietly on the stove, filling the kitchen with steam and the aroma of herbal tea. Ryan immediately took the seat opposite, looking at his neighbor with interest. "Do you really sleep on the sofa?" the boy suddenly blurted out. "Ryan!" Erin exclaimed reproachfully, turning around with the teapot. "What kind of questions are you asking?" Marcus smiled. "It's okay. Yes, Ryan, it's true. We only have one bedroom for Tyler right now, and I'm on the couch in the living room. Mom's sleeping on the couch too," the boy said very seriously, looking down. "Because Dad's gone." There was silence for a couple of seconds. Erin awkwardly put the kettle down. "Sorry." Marcus raised his palm. "Everything is fine." He looked at Ryan softly. "You know, my Tyler is also worried that his dad lives separately. It's not easy." Ryan nodded, poking at the tabletop with his finger. To him. Erin sighed, patting her son on the shoulder. "Go turn on your cartoon, Sunshine. I'll call you when the tea is ready." The boy didn't object, obviously. He didn't want to talk about his dad. He disappeared into the living room. Erin sank into the chair opposite Marcus. "Children can't hide the truth, can they?" She smiled bitterly. "True," Marcus nodded, "but maybe it's for the best." Erin looked into his eyes. "Divorced?" "Yes, about 3 months," he answered directly. "I have 6 months," she admitted. "I think Ryan is still hoping that everything will go back. And I'm trying not to crush his hopes too abruptly, but—" Marcus understood all too well. He cupped his hand around the mug of tea, even though it was still empty. "Tyler said make up at first, too." He chuckled sadly. "And his mom and I. Well, it's a complicated story. I don't think there's a way back." Erin nodded silently, seeming to be in a similar situation. The kettle rang. She began pouring boiling water, adding tea bags to the cups. Marcus took out the cookies he had brought, and they laid them out on a saucer. "Sometimes it feels like you're living someone else's life," Marcus said quietly, stirring his tea. "Yesterday there were still family plans, and today everything is different." Erin sank into a chair with her cup. "Yes, the first months I kept saying, I'll start my life from scratch. But then I thought, why from scratch? I have a past, I have a son, I have experience. We don't erase everything like a clean slate." Marcus listened attentively. Erin broke off a piece of cookie, continuing. "You know, a psychologist once told me, you don't need to do everything all over again, build it in parallel. That is, life doesn't start all over again, It just goes along a different path next to what was. In parallel, you understand? Marcus held his breath for a moment. Aaron's words resonated powerfully. He repeated slowly. Not anew, but in parallel. Yes, perhaps that's true. Aaron smiled slightly. This phrase really helped me stop blaming myself. I'm gnawing at the guilt of not saving my family, but running away from the past is also useless. Exactly, Marcus felt as if he had found a kindred spirit. I, too, am trying to accept that the past remains a part of me, even if everything is different now. They looked at each other with warm understanding. Our children are the parallel that will always connect us to our old lives, Aaron added quietly, and that's okay. Marcus responded sincerely. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. It really helps me hear those words from someone who's going through the same thing. She touched his hand on the table lightly. It's easier together, right? At least just to talk. Marcus felt the nagging sadness that had always been in his chest ease a little. He responded with a light squeeze of her hand. I'm glad we met. At that moment, Ryan appeared in the kitchen doorway. Mom, can I have another cookie? He asked timidly. Sure, take it. Aaron smiled and removed her hand, standing up. Marcus treated you, so go ahead. The boy stole a couple of cookies and ran away. The sound of laughter from the cartoon was heard in the living room. Marcus glanced at his watch. Oh, I guess I've been sitting too long. Aaron waved her hand. Oh well, it's our day off, no business. But if it's time, I won't hold you up. Marcus stood up. I should probably pick up Tyler from his mom. It's my turn to have dinner with him today. Of course, Aaron stood up too. Thank you for the company and the treat. These cookies are delicious. Glad you liked it, and thanks for the tea and the conversation. They approached the door. Marcus had already reached for the handle when Aaron suddenly said, Listen, maybe we can get out together sometime. The four of us, the kids can go for a walk, we can chat. Marcus felt an unexpected joy at this proposal. Great idea. I think Tyler would be happy to. We could take them to the park or to a game next weekend. Okay? Aaron smiled. Then we'll write. Marcus exchanged phone numbers with her. Aaron had already grabbed the door handle when Marcus suddenly called out to her quietly. Aaron, maybe we could go get coffee sometime, just the two of us. Well, without the kids. She looked up in surprise, then a warm smile appeared on her face. I wouldn't mind. Marcus felt his heart jump joyfully in his chest. Great. They smiled at each other even warmer. See you later, he said, walking out into the entrance. See you later, she repeated quietly. After closing the door behind him, Marcus caught himself smiling. For the first time in a long time, he felt that there might be not only heaviness ahead, but also new bright moments. Let them not cross out the past, but they will go along with it, enriching life. On his way down, he dialed Jess's number to set up a time with Tyler and caught a reflection of his smiling face in the mirror on the landing. He was surprised he hadn't seen himself like this for a long time. Not anew, but in parallel, Marcus repeated to himself, firmly deciding to move forward along his new path. One evening, Tyler, picking at his pasta with a fork during dinner at Marcus's, suddenly asked, Dad, do you have a girlfriend? Marcus almost dropped his fork in surprise. What makes you think that? He asked cautiously. Tyler shrugged. Well, you talked to Aunt Erin on the phone a lot, and you went for a walk together last weekend. Marcus felt warmth creep into his cheeks. He had been in frequent contact with Erin over the past couple of weeks, calling each other, taking the kids to the park together. But he hadn't expected his son to notice it so directly. Erin is a good neighbor, he answered after a pause. We became friends because you and Ryan have common interests. And Mom said you have the right to be friends with whoever you want, Tyler added, looking straight at his father. She doesn't mind. Marcus couldn't help but smile. Have you talked to your mother about this? Tyler nodded. I told her that we were all walking together. She asked who Aunt Erin was. I said, a neighbor with her son. Mom then said, That's good. Dad has his own life. But then she seemed sad. Marcus quietly pushed his plate away. His heart ached. It seemed that Jess was really thinking about his personal life. It was a strange feeling. Not long ago they were married, and now they were discussing each other's new friends. He patted his son on the hand. Thank you for telling me. You know, it happens with adults. After a divorce, everyone starts their own life. But that doesn't mean we love you less. I know, Tyler sighed. It's just weird. Marcus nodded. Me too. Late that night, after putting his son to bed, Marcus fiddled with his phone, debating whether to call Jess. Finally, he typed out a message. Hi. Tyler was telling me about the conversation you had. Maybe we should talk about something ourselves? Jess responded almost immediately. Yes, I think so. Should I call? Marcus braced himself for a difficult conversation and pressed the call button. Hi, Jess's voice came, a little tense. Hello. You probably want to ask about Aaron. Actually, what I meant to say was... Jess began and trailed off. Marcus waited patiently. I wanted to say that you have every right to a private life, she finally blurted out. I don't mind if you communicate with someone. Marcus couldn't help but smile. Same here, Jess. We agreed to be honest. If you have someone too, well, you know. There was a pause. Then Jess quietly admitted, Anthony, we're still together. Marcus closed his eyes. He had expected it, but hearing the strange man's name still stung. However, he pulled himself together. It's clear. I was slow to introduce him to Tyler, Jess said quickly. But he comes over sometimes. He stayed the night the other night. Tyler didn't seem to understand. He just thought he was my friend. Marcus's throat was dry. The image of a strange man in his former home with his son was unpleasant. But he forced himself to speak calmly. It's your right. You're the mother. You know better when and who to introduce to your son. Mark. Jess seemed taken aback by his restraint. I don't want this to hurt you. I just want you to know. I appreciate the candor, he replied softly. It would have been worse if I'd found out by accident from Tyler. Jess breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you. For a while, both were silent, not knowing how to continue. Marcus was the first to decide. Tyler mentioned you were asking about my neighbor. Yeah, it was stupid, Jess said quickly. It's just unexpected that you had a friend. Erin's just a friend, he explained. She's raising her son alone, too. We support each other, nothing more. I understand, Jess hesitated. But if it gets more, that's okay too, Mark. Honestly. Marcus heard sincerity mixed with sadness in her voice. He even wanted to comfort her, strangely. You know, he said quietly, you have the right to be happy too. We did what we could. Now the main thing is that Tyler is happy, and we deserve a little joy too, Jess finished for him. Marcus smiled invisibly. Exactly. Let's do it this way then, Jess suggested. We'll keep each other in the loop if we decide to introduce Tyler to someone closer, so there won't be any secrets. I agree, Marcus confirmed. I'm not planning anything like that yet, but if it happens, I'll tell you. Me too, she said. Anthony wants to take Tyler and me to the zoo soon. I'll explain that he's a good friend of mine. Marcus's grip on the phone tightened, but his voice remained even. I think Tyler will accept. He's a smart boy. Yes. Jess's voice was filled with tears. He's so understanding, even too much for his age. That's true, Marcus agreed softly. There was a silence, this time warmer, without the previous tension. Before saying goodbye, Jess said quietly, You know, I'm glad we can talk like this, without swearing. Thank you. Marcus felt a strange relief. Thank you too, Jess. They said goodbye. Putting his phone down, Marcus exhaled as if he had lifted a heavy weight off his back. The conversation he had been dreading had been calm and honest. Yes, it had hurt to hear about Anthony, but at the same time he had felt something else, the release of an old grudge. He realized that he was not as jealous as he had previously thought. Perhaps, deep down, he had already let Jess go. Before going to bed, Marcus sent a quick text to Erin. I think Jess and I have finally resolved some old knots. I'll tell you tomorrow. Good night. The answer came almost immediately. I'm very happy for you. Good night, Mark. Marcus smiled at the phone and went to bed. Everyone had their own personal lives now, and that was okay. The only thing that mattered was that Tyler had a happy mom and dad by his side, even if they found their happiness in different houses and with different people. Spring was coming into its own, and Marcus felt the strength for change. He decided to finally put his home in order to do something he hadn't gotten around to before. The apartment, although comfortable, still seemed like a temporary shelter. White, featureless walls, a minimum of decor. It was time to turn it into a real home for himself and his son. On Saturday morning, Marcus woke Tyler up earlier than usual. Wake up, champion. We have big plans today. The son rubbed his eyes. What other plans? We're going to do some renovations, Marcus announced cheerfully. A little remodeling. We'll go pick out some paint for the walls. Tyler grimaced at first. The prospect of going to the paint store didn't seem exciting to him. But once he was fully awake, he became interested in the idea. Can I choose the color for my room? Of course, Marcus smiled. That's exactly what we're going for. An hour later, they were wandering around the DIY supermarket. Tyler, animated, was running between the shelves with cans of paint, choosing a shade for his bedroom. After much thought, he settled on a light green, the color of grass on a baseball field. Marcus liked the choice. For the living room, he chose a warm gray-blue tone and decided to refresh the kitchen with bright orange accents. Having loaded a cart with cans of paint, brushes, rollers, and rolls of film for covering furniture, father and son returned home to transform their home. Anna volunteered to help. She arrived during the day, bringing homemade sandwiches and lemonade for the workers. Well, team, are you ready to work? The sister asked cheerfully, putting a headscarf on her head. Ready, Tyler responded, already wrapping an old sheet around himself instead of a jumpsuit. Together, they moved the furniture into the center of the rooms, covered the floors with film. Marcus tore off some boring old wallpaper from the walls and decided to leave the bare plastered concrete for painting it so fashionable now. The work was going well. Tyler and his uncle were busy in the nursery, rolling green paint on the walls, periodically having a roller battle. Anna was carefully drawing an orange stripe on the kitchen wall with a brush, humming to herself. Marcus was happily smoothing a wide roller across the living room, feeling how the monotonous whiteness gave way to a noble gray-blue color. Dad, look how cool it is. Tyler stuck his head out of his room. The sleeve of his old t-shirt was stained green. There was a stain on his nose, too. A happy smile was shining on his face. Marcus came over to take a look. One wall of the room had already turned grassy green. Wow, it's like being at a stadium, he praised. Yeah, Tyler walked proudly inside. I'll put a team poster here and a shelf for the balls here. Marcus nodded. He was glad to see his son so involved. This wasn't just a renovation. This was creating a new, cozy world for the two of them. By evening, the main part of the painting work was finished. Tired, all four of them settled right on the living room floor. The furniture had not yet been arranged. Anna poured lemonade into mugs. Well, gentlemen, congratulations on Housewarming 2.0, she declared, raising her mug. It was white and boring, but now it's bright and stylish. Everyone clinked glasses and sipped sweet lemonade. Marcus looked around. The living room walls now gave off a pleasant sea wave. In the corner, Anna had made a funny pattern with a sponge. The kitchen seemed to smile with an orange stripe. Tyler's joyful voice came from the nursery. He was calling to look at the second layer of paint. Marcus sighed quietly in satisfaction. The house had acquired an individuality that reflected his and his son's personalities. He remembered how he had recently been afraid of the emptiness around him, and now these walls were breathing new life. Late that evening, after Anna and her assistants had left, Marcus put a tired Tyler to bed in his newly renovated, slightly paint-scented room. The boy yawned and rubbed his eyes, but the happy smile never left his face. "Dad, my room is like a field now," Tyler whispered, snuggling into a fresh pillow. "That's right." Marcus leaned over, adjusting the blanket. "We'll show it to Mom tomorrow via video link, okay?" Tyler nodded, his eyes already closing. "Thank you," he muttered sleepily. Marcus quietly kissed his son on the top of his head and turned off the nightlight. After that, he fiddled around a bit, putting the furniture back in place. Before going to bed, Marcus typed a quick message to Jess, a couple of photos of Tyler smiling in front of his green wall. She responded almost immediately with a smiley face and the words, "You did great. It turned out really nice." Marcus smiled. Yes, they were great. He and his son were building a new life, their own. Brick by brick, stroke by stroke, maybe not from scratch, but on top of what had been done, but brightly and to their own taste. On a summer evening, the town baseball field was bustling with activity. Dozens of boys in uniform were warming up for Little League games, and parents were gathering around the perimeter with folding chairs and thermoses. A warm breeze carried the smell of freshly cut grass and popcorn from a tent near the entrance, lifting the mood as parents prepared for their children's intense game. Tyler's team, the Eagles, were preparing for the big game of the season. Marcus was setting up folding chairs at third base. Aaron stood nearby, holding a cooler of drinks. Their sons were already running around the field, Tyler stretching his shoulders by tossing the ball, and Ryan was waving from the opposite team. They were on the field today. "I'm nervous about playing myself," Marcus admitted, placing the game program on his lap. Aaron laughed. "Exactly. Every time Ryan steps into the bat, my heart skips a beat." They settled in side by side. Across the field, near first base, Marcus spotted familiar figures. Jess and a tall man next to him, probably Anthony. Tyler was already waving at them. Marcus felt a slight twinge in his chest, but he quickly looked back at his son. He knew that today was all about supporting Tyler. The game started loudly. Tyler was the first pitcher. His first pitches were successful, 2 strikes in a row. Marcus couldn't help but shout loudly, "Great, Ty." He heard Jess clapping from the other side of the field, too. "Well done," she shouted loudly. Marcus and Jess couldn't help but meet eyes across the field and smile, both proud of their son. Aaron leaned towards Marcus. "Your ex? Beautiful." "Yeah," he nodded calmly. "That's Anthony with her." "I see." Aaron touched his elbow gently. "Are you okay?" "It's fine," Marcus answered honestly, watching Tyler as he prepared to serve again. "We talked. It's all civilized." Aaron nodded approvingly, and their attention turned back to the game. Tyler served the third ball. Ryan's striker hit it straight into the air. The ball went up in the air like a lob. Tyler jumped up to try to catch it. Marcus froze, clutching the arms of his chair. The ball was coming down fast, and Tyler jumped and caught it in his glove. "Out!" the judge's voice thundered. The Eagles' stands exploded with joyful shouts. Marcus jumped up. "Bravo, son." Aaron clapped too, just as happy for Tyler. Across the field, Marcus saw Jess beaming, hugging Anthony with emotion. During the break, Marcus decided to approach Jess, partly to say hello in person, partly to show everyone that everything was okay between them. Aaron stayed put, giving them space. "Hey," Marcus said cheerfully, catching Jess at the fence. "What a game today." Jess nodded, slightly embarrassed. "Tyler is on fire. I can't praise him enough." "Yeah, great," Marcus agreed, feeling a strange lightness. Talking to Jess in person turned out to be easy. Anthony, a strong-built man with an open expression, approached them. "Mark, it's a pleasure to meet you." He extended his hand. "I heard about you from Jess and Tyler." Marcus responded with a firm handshake. "Likewise, Anthony. Thanks for supporting our boy." "He's a great boy," Anthony said warmly. There was little awkwardness. Jess introduced Marcus as Tyler's father, noting that he was there with his friend. Marcus waved his hand toward third base. "Yes, I'm with my neighbor and her son. They're friends with Tyler." Jess smiled understandingly. Oh, that's great. The referee blew his whistle, calling the teams together. Marcus wished them a good viewing and returned to Aaron. His heart was beating a little faster for him. This short conversation had been an important step. He was convinced that he could safely be around Jess's new man for the sake of his son. The second half was tense. Ryan's team began to come back. The score was tied. Towards the end of the game, Tyler came to bat in a difficult situation. 2 outs, full bases. A hit was needed to put the Eagles ahead. Marcus was barely breathing. He watched Tyler get into a concentrated stance. Pitch strike snap, the ball flies over the infield and deep into the outfield. Tyler ran the bases. 3 Eagles runners made it home. Tyler made it to second base while the Eagles were picking up the ball. 3 runs scored. The crowd cheered. Marcus was jumping up and down like a boy, hugging Aaron and clapping. He could see Tyler looking their way, beaming, waiting for approval. Marcus waved both hands. Well done, son. Keep it up. And from the other side of the field came Jess's voice. Smart girl, Ty. At that moment, Marcus realized that despite the divorce, their family was still united in their love for their son. Even though they were on different sides, they were shouting the same thing, supporting their boy. The game ended with the Eagles winning. Tyler became the hero of the match. After the award ceremony, he ran first to his mother. Jess kissed him. Anthony shook his hand. Then the son ran to his father and literally jumped on his neck. Marcus hugged the sweaty, happy boy tightly. I'm proud of you, he whispered. Dad, did you see my double? Tyler was overcome with emotion. Of course, it was amazing. Jess and Anthony came up next, followed by Aaron and Ryan. Everyone surrounded Tyler, congratulating him. For the first time in a long time, Marcus found himself with both Jess and Aaron, the 2 important women in his life, now without any tension. They laughed together as they discussed key moments in the game, Ryan admiringly telling Tyler, "You did it." At one point, Marcus stepped back, looking at the scene from the outside. His son, surrounded by loving people, his mom, dad, their friends. Not an ideal family, but a real family, expanded by new caring hearts. He met Jess's gaze. She nodded warmly. Everything would be fine. Marcus smiled back. Yes, everything would definitely be fine because for this little champion, they were ready to stand shoulder to shoulder, forgetting old grievances. A week after the Eagles' triumph, something every parent secretly dreaded happened. At a game with just a half-inning left, Tyler, playing catcher, collided with an opposing runner. It all happened in an instant. The runner crashed into Tyler while trying to get around the out, and both of them went down. Marcus, watching from the stands, saw the boys' bodies tangled and rolling across the dirt. His heart sank. Tyler lay motionless. The other boy stood up, rubbing his shoulder, but Tyler didn't move. Tyler, Jess screamed from the other side of the field. Marcus was already running, jumping over the fence, straight towards the place where he fell. Aaron rushed after him. The referees and coaches also rushed towards the fallen player. Son, can you hear me? Marcus knelt down next to Tyler. Tyler was lying on his side, his face pale, his eyes squeezed shut in pain, moaning softly, his hand clutching his neck. Don't move him. One of the adults said sternly. It seemed to be the father of another player, a doctor by profession. Marcus froze, afraid to touch his son. Jess ran in from the other side, falling to her knees at Tyler's head. Ty, baby, can you hear me? Her voice broke. Tyler opened his eyes slightly, tears streaming down his cheeks. It hurts. My neck. He croaked barely audibly. Marcus felt the world wobbling around him. Neck. I hope it's not broken. Did you call an ambulance? He asked loudly to the crowd around him. Yes, they are already on their way. The coach responded, holding the phone in his hand. Hang in there, son, Marcus whispered, trying to keep his voice calm. The doctors will be here soon, and they'll help. Jess, sobbing silently, stroked the boy's forehead, trying not to move him. Anthony stood a little to the side, pale, pressing his hand to his lips. Aaron held Marcus's shoulder, transmitting her quiet presence to him. The ambulance siren probably sounded minutes later, but for Marcus it felt like an eternity. He kept repeating, "It's going to be okay, Ty, we're here," even though he could barely believe his voice. The medics carefully laid Tyler on a hard stretcher, securing his neck with a special collar. Tyler closed his eyes in pain at the slightest movement. "We're with him," Marcus and Jess blurted out simultaneously as the stretcher was carried to the car. In the end, both parents got into the ambulance. No one even thought of objecting. Anthony and Aaron promised to follow in the car. Marcus held his son's uninjured hand as he lay under the straps. Jess stroked Tyler's leg, whispering prayers. They waited in the hospital waiting room for what felt like an eternity, maybe half an hour. Marcus paced the narrow hallway several times, listening to the echoing footsteps. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, and nothing could be heard behind the closed door of the X-ray room. Jess sat up and stood up, wringing her fingers. Aaron and Anthony exchanged silent glances, trying to instill confidence with at least a glance. Finally, a doctor in a lab coat appeared. Tyler Green's parents. Marcus and Jess rushed towards him. The doctor smiled good-naturedly. "Your son is lucky. No serious injuries were found. No fractured cervical vertebrae, no concussion. There is a severe strain of the neck muscles, the so-called whiplash injury. He will need to wear a neck brace for a couple of weeks and rest." "Will he be okay?" Jess asked, her voice breaking. "Yes, of course," the doctor nodded. "Your neck will hurt for a couple of days. We'll give you a painkiller. The main thing is to make sure he doesn't turn his head without a collar. Otherwise, he's young, he'll heal." Marcus closed his eyes, forcing the air out of his chest. For the first time in an hour, he was able to take a full breath. "Can I see him?" he asked. "Yes, he's already been transferred to the ward," said the doctor. "Just try not to make any noise. He's sedated." In the hospital room, Tyler lay on the bed, a white, soft collar around his neck. His face was still pale, but he opened his eyes as his parents approached. "Mom, Dad," he whispered in a weak voice. Marcus squeezed his hand gently. "We're here, champion. Everything's fine." Jess stroked her son's hair. "The doctor said you'll be running soon. Just lie still, okay?" Tyler nodded slightly, his eyes filling with tears again. "Sorry, I let the team down." Marcus barely held back a bitter smile and the tears that welled up. "What are you saying, son? You scared everyone, but no one was thinking about any game. The main thing is that you're healthy." Jess sobbed and gently kissed her son on the forehead. "Don't be silly. We are so proud of you. You are very brave." Aaron and Anthony were waiting peacefully outside the door. Once the parents had calmed Tyler down a bit and were sure he was okay, they went out to their friends. Anthony was the first to hug Jess. "Thank God, everything is fine." Aaron squeezed Marcus' shoulder tightly, looking into his eyes. "I told you, everything will be fine." Marcus exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body. "Thank you. Without you, we would go crazy here." They sat on the hard chairs in the hallway, experiencing the shock together. Jess leaned her forehead against Anthony's shoulder, not caring what anyone thought right now. Marcus took Aaron's hand in his, grateful to have her there. "You know," Jess said quietly, looking at her sleeping son through the window of the ward, "when I saw him lying there, I realized that nothing was more important. No old grievances, no new attachments. If only our boy was alive and well." Marcus nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, that's the most important thing." Aaron, sitting next to him, suddenly said thoughtfully, "Children give us fragile happiness. You take care of it as best you can." Marcus squeezed her hand tighter. He looked at Jess and Anthony. "Our family will cope, I know it." For the first time that terrible day, Jess smiled at Marcus, the same warm smile she had in her best years. Of course he can handle it. In the silence of the hospital corridor, they all felt the same thing: gratitude for the fragile, yet precious life that connected them all. Tyler recovered quickly. A few days later, he was discharged home with a collar around his neck and strict rest orders. Marcus and Jess agreed to take turns being with him. Tyler was with his mother during the day and was taken to his father at night, which made everyone feel more comfortable. On one of those evenings, Marcus threw a little party for his son. He bought him ice cream and let him watch comedy videos on his tablet for a long time. Tyler sat on the couch, hugging his stuffed shark, his collar slightly restricting his movements, but his mood had noticeably improved. "Dad, when can I play again?" he asked, popping a spoonful of ice cream into his mouth. Marcus sat down next to him. "The doctor said that in a couple of weeks you can train a little, but without any sudden movements, so you will probably return to the team by the playoffs." "Phew, good." Tyler breathed a sigh of relief. He paused, poking at the melting mass in the cup with his spoon, and quietly added, "Were you very scared for me?" Marcus felt a lump of memory rise in his throat, remembering that horror. "Very," he admitted softly. "We were all very scared. You are our treasure." Tyler smiled shyly and suddenly pressed himself as close to his father as his collar would allow. Marcus gently hugged his son. "I'm sorry," the boy whispered. "For what?" The father was surprised. "Well, what made you so worried?" Tyler said quietly. Marcus shook his head and pulled back slightly to look his son in the eye. "It's part of a parent's job to worry. It's better to be scared 100 times than to be disappointed. We managed. The main thing is that you're safe and almost unharmed." Tyler nodded seriously. "I understand." "Hey, how is he?" Aaron's voice came. "I fell asleep peacefully," Marcus answered in a low voice. "We watched funny videos, and I laughed carefully so as not to jerk my neck." "That's a good sign," Aaron smiled through her words. "Are you okay?" Marcus looked up at the starry sky above the quiet houses. His heart beat steadily for the first time in days. "I'm grateful," he said, choosing his words, "for everything. That Ty is alive, that you were there, that life goes on in general, despite everything." Aaron paused. "That's great to hear, Mark. You know, Ryan and I were planning on stopping by tomorrow to check in." "Of course, we'll wait," he said warmly. The next morning, Erin and her son brought gifts, homemade pie, and a new board game for the sick man. Ryan did not leave his friend's side all day. They laid out the game right on the living room floor. Marcus and Erin settled down in the kitchen to drink tea. Erin watched as Marcus mechanically wiped the wall near the sink with a rag. "I thought there was a stain here," he began, but chuckled. "I think I'm a little obsessed with the order after the renovation." Aaron looked around the renovated kitchen. The orange stripe was showing small smudges. Here and there Marcus remembered how his hand had shaken from fatigue that day. "By the way, I noticed a couple of uneven spots in the paint," she said with a smile. "We can fix them later." Marcus suddenly shook his head. "You know, let it stay. These uneven areas are Tyler and I's art. A sign that we did everything ourselves with soul, even if it's not perfect." Erin narrowed her eyes playfully. "Philosopher, but there is a point to it." Marcus exhaled and leaned against the countertop. "I was thinking, before I was always afraid that my life was not as it should be, that it wasn't smooth. But now, well, to hell with it. Unevenness is a sign that we are alive." Erin put down her cup and came closer, looking into his eyes. "This, Mark, is the most correct idea." He hugged her, feeling how well her warmth fit into his new home. There was a chuckle from behind him, Tyler and Ryan, watching the scene from the doorway. "Oh, I'm sorry." Erin looked embarrassed, but Tyler waved with a smile. "Everything is fine. We are glad that you are hugging." Marcus and Erin burst out laughing. They walked over to the kids, and Marcus ruffled his son's hair. "Hey, don't you by any chance need some pills for excessive curiosity?" Ryan and Tyler nodded in unison, and then Tyler said seriously, "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Certainly." The boy smiled. "I'm so glad that everything is fine with us now. even better than before. Marcus felt a twinge of pride and relief in his chest. A year ago, he had worried about how the divorce would affect his son, and now that he had heard that everything had turned out even better, he couldn't imagine a greater reward. Marcus felt a pang of joy. He glanced at Aaron, who was glowing with emotion. "And I'm glad," Marcus answered quietly, hugging his son close, careful not to touch his neck. "We're all very happy, son." The house was filled with a buzz of activity, Ryan calling for more play, Tyler laying out a new rule. Marcus and Aaron stood hand in hand in the midst of the light commotion. It was clear to both of them that the bumps and noise were a sure sign that life was going on, real and full, despite all their previous fears. On a November day, with the streets carpeted with yellow leaves, Anna's house was festive. Marcus and his sister were bustling about in the kitchen, roasting a huge turkey, the aroma of spices wafting out. In the living room, the children were watching the parade on TV, excitedly commenting on the balloons. It was early twilight outside, but the house was aglow with warm light and laughter. This Thanksgiving, the family decided to celebrate together in a new way. Anna insistently invited Jess and Anthony and Aaron and Ryan to thank fate for the fact that we have such a wonderful big family. No one argued. "How's the turkey? Is it burning?" Anna called from behind a mountain of mashed potatoes. "Everything is under control, boss," Marcus responded, looking into the oven. "It's browning according to plan." Erin peered into the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "The table is set. I brought out the salads. How else can I help?" Anna threw up her hands. "Oh, Aaron, go and rest. You've washed all the dishes already. Let the men finish. Call everyone to the table in 10 minutes. Aaron smiled and disappeared into the living room. Marcus couldn't help but peek out after her. She had walked over to the couch, where Jess was sitting with two boys on her lap. Tyler and Anna's younger cousin were reaching for cookies from her hands. The scene was so natural that Marcus's heart filled with quiet happiness. A few minutes later, everyone gathered around a large table, modestly placed in the living room. Anna ceremoniously brought in a brown turkey. The children's enthusiastic exclamations mingled with the adults' applause. "First, as is tradition, what we are grateful for," Anna announced when everyone had sat down and clinked glasses of wine and juice. "I am grateful that our family is together today and that we have overcome all the bad things." Marcus looked around at the group. Aaron was next to him, holding his hand under the tablecloth, looking slightly nervous. Jess was opposite him with Anthony, looking calm and happy. Tyler and Ryan were whispering something, anticipating the treat. The turn of thanks reached Marcus. He raised his glass. "I am grateful for." He hesitated for a second, "for all the twists and turns in life that have brought us to this table. For our wonderful son, for new friends, for old friends who have become family." Jess caught Marcus's eye and smiled warmly at him, raising her glass. "And I am grateful that we are all healthy and happy, and that Marcus is the best dad in the world for our son." Marcus looked embarrassed, but everyone had already joined in the toast. Tyler shouted the loudest. "Hooray for Dad, and Mom, and Aaron, and Anthony, and Aunt Anna." Laughter rolled across the table. "And we're grateful that you kids are so cool," Anthony added, patting Tyler and Ryan on the back. As the turkey was being carved and the treats were being served, the conversations became mixed about plans for the winter holidays, about the kids' recent successes. Jess was excitedly discussing a cranberry sauce recipe with Aaron, Anthony was chatting with Anna's friend about football, and Marcus was telling the boys a story from his childhood about a turkey's unsuccessful swim, a humorous family legend. At one point, Tyler said out loud, "I am grateful that I now have so many people I love." The adults fell silent, looking at the boy with emotion. Marcus quietly stood up and walked up to his son, putting his arm around his shoulders. "We are grateful too, Ty." Tyler smiled dazzlingly and suddenly pulled first his mother's hand, then Aaron's. "We need to hug." There was a friendly commotion at the table. Everyone started standing up, hugging. Someone was laughing and wiping away tears. Marcus hugged Jess tightly. She whispered, Thank you for everything." He nodded, his eyes shining. Then he pulled Erin to him and kissed her cheek. She was no longer hiding her tears of happiness. Anna clapped her hands. "Well, before the turkey gets cold, let's eat." The adults sat down, and the children giggled and wiped the spilled juice off their sleeves. Bowls of golden mashed potatoes, a gravy boat of cranberry sauce, and a pumpkin pie in the center filled the room with the cozy aromas of cinnamon and roasted meat. The meal continued with cheerful conversation and warm toasts. Later in the evening, after the guests had left, Marcus went out onto the porch of Anna's house to see Jess, Anthony, and Tyler off. Tyler, stuffed with pie, snuggled sleepily against his father. "Thank you for inviting us," Jess said quietly, adjusting her son's scarf. "You're welcome," Marcus replied. "We're a team after all." Anthony shook Marcus's hand. "It was nice to meet you better. Great holiday." "Likewise," Marcus smiled. Tyler hugged his father goodbye. "Bye, Dad. See you on Saturday. Bye, champion. And congratulate Grandma tomorrow from me." The car disappeared around the corner. Marcus stood for another second under the cold, starry sky. A quiet jubilation and peace reigned in his soul. This Thanksgiving Day really lived up to its name. The soul had not poured out so much gratitude for a long time. Erin peeked out from behind the door. "You'll freeze. Let's go inside." Marcus returned to the warm living room. Anna was clearing away the last of the plates. Ryan was already nodding off in her arms. Erin leaned against Marcus's shoulder and asked quietly, "What are you thinking about?" Marcus put his arm around her waist and, looking at the flickering candles on the table, replied, "That sometimes you have to lose the old to gain the new, and how lucky I am with all of this." Erin nodded, understanding without words. Ahead of them was dessert and a long, happy life with all its bumps, tears, and laughter. And for that, it was worth saying to fate, "Thank you." Late at night, after the big day was over, Marcus stood on the landing outside his apartment. Inside, behind the half-open door, Erin and Tyler were talking in low voices. The son couldn't calm down from the excitement of telling his stepfather Anthony via video link about the whole mountain of turkey he'd eaten. Marcus smiled slightly and quietly closed the door, remaining outside on the stairs. Only a duty light was on in the entryway, casting a soft light on the steps. Marcus sat down on the bottom step of the landing, leaning his elbows on the railing. His heart was unusually calm. A year ago, at the same late hour, he sat alone in a stranger's living room, not knowing what lay ahead. Then there was only pain and emptiness. And now, behind the thin door, there was a whole world filled with laughter, friendship, love. Marcus ran his hand over the cool metal of the banister. The stairwell's bars cast an uneven shadow on the floor. He suddenly remembered the sleepless nights after the divorce, how he walked around the apartment, how he sat on the steps of his sister's house, trying to figure himself out. He remembered how he sat at night in front of the screen of that same cheap surveillance camera that had revealed the bitter truth to him, feeling empty. Those night steps had become his silent interlocutors. Now he was sitting on the steps of his building, not from grief, but from quiet happiness, from overwhelming gratitude. All the rough spots on the road, all the sharp turns had led him here. He had to go through betrayal, divorce, loneliness to learn to appreciate true peace and joy. Erin's muffled laughter could be heard from behind the door. Tyler must be cracking another serious expert joke. Marcus knew his son was happy. He had two loving families, and the world around him had only gotten wider. Marcus rose to his feet and leaned his head back against the wall. The night sky was visible through the small window in the stairwell, a few stars twinkling above the city. He spoke quietly to himself. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. Marcus remembered his first night in this apartment, feeling empty and lost among the boxes and silence. He had no idea how much warmth and joy would fill these walls a few months later. Now, all the bitter shadows had dissipated. Marcus turned the knob and walked into the house. The hallway was dark and cozy. Erin stood leaning against the doorframe, greeting him with a warm gaze. "Is everything okay?" she asked in a whisper. Marcus walked over and hugged her, pulling her close. Everything is fine. He looked into the living room. Tyler was already asleep on the couch, covered with a blanket, holding his phone. The family chat was still open on the screen, the last message from Jess. "Good night, everyone. Love you." Marcus carefully pulled the phone out of his son's hands and turned off the light. Aaron brought a pillow, and together, trying not to make noise, they moved the boy more comfortably. Tyler mumbled something in his sleep and inhaled sweetly. Marcus and Aaron walked quietly out into the hallway, holding hands. The night was calm all around. Aaron gently touched his cheek with her lips. "I love you." "And I you," he smiled, answering her with a kiss. They walked together into the bedroom, leaving the dark living room behind. The dim light of the nightlight momentarily picked out the steps of the staircase from the darkness, the very ones where Marcus had been thinking about the past a moment ago. He lingered with his gaze on the bottom step and quietly said goodbye to the melancholy that had once sat there next to him. Now love and hope had taken its place, and when the bedroom door closed behind them, the night covered the house with silence, the silence of peaceful happiness, hard-won and therefore priceless. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.